Imagine you work for Denny's, which is one of the large breakfast restaurant chains in the United States. And you want to know how your competitor, IHOP, did on Tuesday, March 1st, 2022, which was Pancake Day or Shrove Tuesday. Your competitor, IHOP, ran a special that day, and they were giving out free pancakes until 4 p.m. Now, you can actually use some really great data from SafeGraph to be able to look at your competitor and understand how they performed. This is data that you can purchase really easily on the internet and is not that expensive. I want to show you how you can do that in this upcoming video. But first, let's take a second to talk about SafeGraph data and why I think it is so useful and helpful. First, I want to acknowledge that this is a video that is done in partnership with SafeGraph, but I want to make it clear I am fully supportive of the SafeGraph product, and this partnership would not have come about if I was not fully on board with their product and it was something that I did not use in my own analysis work. I think that SafeGraph is a fantastic organization, and I really encourage you to look them up. They are also, at this point in time, hiring. So without further ado, let's chat a little bit more about SafeGraph data. SafeGraph as a product has 4 different product lines. They are places, patterns, geography, and spend. I'm going to go through all of these pretty quickly. When we get into the analysis portion of this, we are going to be looking primarily at the places and patterns data. So places is a point of interest or POI data set. What that means is SafeGraph has gone throughout the United States, Canada, and the UK, and you can purchase point of interest data. POI data are things like grocery stores, schools, parks, and unlike many other POI data sets, they have really enriched it to provide a lot of valuable information. Things like the opening and closing times, the address, and you may say that you can get that from other data sources, and perhaps you can. The SafeGraph data, though, is broken up into NICS codes and there's just a high level of fidelity to it. It is also something that is validated, and they have a whole team of people who validate this data, unlike something like OSM. I think that OSM, OpenStreetMap, is a really fantastic resource to get started, but oftentimes I found that it's lacking because it is an open source data set. So for example, I was looking at my own community, and the really big grocery store was marked as a dry cleaner instead of being marked as a grocery store. And there's just not consistency within attribution within OpenStreetMap, whereas within the places data from SafeGraph, everything is all attributed the same way. And so there's just consistency, which is really helpful. And the second data set is the patterns data set. And this is where I think SafeGraph is unique and really stands out in the marketplace. So their patterns data uses cell phone data and other data sets to really understand who people are who are coming to businesses. So for example, the patterns data, and this is what we'll be using in this analysis, enables you to spy on your competitors. So you can look at a particular store location using that based off of their places data, and you can understand, for that week, how many people came to that location. And again, it's based off of cell phone data, so it's not going to be a totally accurate representation, but you can get sort of an order of magnitude. But you can also understand, where are they coming from? Where do they live? Where do those people work? That gives you a lot of information, but in particular, to be able to understand your own customer base, but also to be able to understand the customer bases of your competitors. This is just revolutionary in terms of being able to do better and deeper analysis. The third data set that they have is geometry. And so geometry data are the polygon footprints of buildings. And again, this is something that can be super helpful. In some of the work that I've done in the past, we use the geometry data set to be able to understand if grocery stores were located in a strip mall or if they were standalone. There was a lot more analysis that sort of went into that, but having the geometry of knowing, that this is a grocery store and it is located, in proximity to these other places was really invaluable and led to some really fantastic analysis for a client of mine. And the fourth data set is spend. This has recently come out, and a data set that I think is just fantastic, and paired with the patterns data can allow you again to do some really deep analysis. And the spend data leverages credit card data, from businesses and gives you an idea about how much is being spent there. So can you imagine as someone who works at Denny's being able to look at the credit card transaction data of your competitor at IHOP? That is mind-blowing, right? Before you would have to try and back into that, or you'd have to rely on investment reports, but to be able to understand like at a site level and then be able to aggregate that up, this is going to be a game changer. And I am so excited that SafeGraph has done this. Now, all of these data sets are great, and but a lot of times there's a really high cost to entry to using these sorts of data sets. That is where I am such a big fan of SafeGraph and where I think that they are remarkably different than their competitors. The reason why is shop.safegraph.com. That's linked in the description below, and I really encourage you to go look it up. You can also use a special promo code, Juliana50, also in the description box. They'll give you $50 off your first purchase. But just like you can go buy anything online, you can actually go buy data. And so you don't need to write a single line of code to be able to purchase the places, the patterns, or the geometry data. As of the time of this recording, the spend data is not up in the SafeGraph shop, but it will be very soon, I have been told. So let's actually go take a look and see and understand what this means for you. All right, so here I am on shop.safegraph.com. You can find a link to that in the description box below. And what I think is so fantastic about SafeGraph data is that there is this shop in which you can go buy the data. This is democratizing access to data, and I can't speak enough about why that is so important. That means that small mission-driven organizations, mom and pop shops, anyone can go on here and buy access to the data. The data is very, very affordable and just broadens the access of availability of data. So you can buy an enterprise license if you want to buy, do lots and lots of analysis. But for many people, you can just buy one-off. And I think that is where SafeGraph really stands out in the marketplace, but also from an ethical perspective, why they are leaps and bounds ahead of their competitors. So anyway, we're going to go right here where it says brand, and we're going to search for a brand. And so we are, in this example analysis, we are working for Denny's, and we want to understand how IHOP performed. So I'm going to just search here for the brand IHOP. Again, a thing that is really fantastic about the SafeGraph data is they have over 5,000 brands that they have already gone through and categorized for. You can even go here and you can request a brand to be added. So I'm going to go here and search for IHOP. I want to edit the filters because for this analysis, just so it goes a little bit more quickly, we are going to search for a geography. So here I could search for Chicago, where I'm from, but actually I'm just going to search for all of Illinois. There we go. So you can see here that there are 53 records. So that means that there are 53 IHOPs within the state of Illinois. And I'm just going to click here and I'm going to go Save Filter. So for this analysis, I want to have two different data types. I want to get the places data, which is the point of entrance data. So we can look here and we can see the data set details. So for example, place key, which is a broad standard for POI locations that you can read more about. There's the place key, SafeGraph IDs, the brands, the category that it is, subcategory, right? So there's different subcategories. So for here, it's a restaurant, is it a full service restaurant? Is it a takeout restaurant? And the NICS code, which is really helpful depending on what sort of analysis you're doing, the Latin long, the street address, the phone numbers when they're open, some of their categories, when it's been opened. Okay, so we are going to add that places data, and then we want to click back to all data sets. Then the other thing that I want to add here is the patterns data. So the patterns data is, again, one of those things that I just think sets SafeGraph totally apart. So we're going to click here, we're going to go to data set details. So again, we have that place key information that allows you to do a join to the POI data, to the places data. But you can see here we have all of this information. So we have a date range. So when are we looking at for this patterns data? how many visitors were there, the visits by day, what the census block group is for the POI. You could obviously do a spatial join for that, but it's really nice to already have that there. The visitors, what are their home census block groups? So where did these visitors come from, right? So we can see here that there, for this block group, that there were 15 visitors over the course of that 1 week that came from there. And so this is the total visitors. They split it out by also their daytime census block groups. So historically, that would probably be their work block group, but now with so many people still working from home, that's where do they spend their day? So that could be at a college campus, that could be at home. For me, it would be at home. So that is also something that's really helpful, right? Because you can then think about, okay, well, they live here, but they work here, and oh, they're going past my gas station, they're going past my grocery store, right? Can you begin to see all of the different ways that you can begin to use this data? It is so incredibly powerful. How sort of the distance from home, how long people are spending there. So we can see that it looks like, most people are spending 40 to 50 minutes, like the 44 minutes there, which is actually, a decent amount of time. Their dwell times. Where else are they going in the same day? So you can see that people are going to McDonald's and Starbucks and Target in the same day. Again, all of this is super relevant information, right? Because you can then begin to build out better psychographic profiles about your customers. I'm just so excited about this data. All right, so we're gonna actually click Add, and we're gonna add that to our cart. Now, for this analysis, we are looking at the week before National Pancake Day and the week after Pancake Day. So we want a time period. I'm consulting my handy calendar that started on February 21st. So we're going to go to 2022 and week starting February 21st. And then our end time is 2022 and we want March 7th. We're going to click select. And you can see that to get the places data and then 2 weeks of data for the entire state of Illinois for all the IHOPs there, it's going to come up to a whopping $13.90, right? Can you begin to see all of the really great analysis that you can do? You can also aggregate this by month if you just want to look at a month of data. So many different possibilities for how in the world you can have SafeGraph already do that aggregation for you. We're going to click here and we're going to go to checkout. So one thing to know about this data is that you have a 1-year license on your data. Totally fine. And so you're just going to go here and you're going to click checkout. And you then have the opportunity to put in your information and you can actually here add a promo code. So if you add in, if I can spell my name, Juliana50, you are going to get $50 off your first purchase of SafeGraph data. Isn't that amazing? So you can actually you could do the same analysis I'm going to walk you through, or you could do your own analysis. Then enter in your credit card information and then hit pay. I'm going to pause here for a second. All right, and then once you have paid and checked out, in about 15 minutes, you'll get an email from SafeGraph that your data is ready. And it's going to look something like this. So we're going to click Get My Data. And so this is going to bring you back to your SafeGraph account, and you have the ability to then download your data. So you can see here, I have my IHOP, Illinois, and then the patterns data. So we're just going to click Download, and we're going to be ready to go. I've already downloaded this data. And so, we're going to download it here. And here we go. We now have our data downloaded. Wasn't that incredibly easy? This is something that your mom, your grandma could do. It requires 0 lines of code. And that is what I think is so important and useful about the SafeGraph data. All right, so we have downloaded and we have unzipped our data. And now let's get into it. Within your data, there is going to be a README file. And I always think that README file can sometimes be a little bit boring, but this README file is really helpful. So it's just a reminder about what the different types of data are that you may have purchased from them. So again, in this example, I have purchased the places and the foot traffic patterns or the patterns data. SafeGraph has really great documentation, and so here are links to the documentation. And again, if you want to access this data programmatically, instead of relying on the GUI, you can also do that through their API, and there is a link to that in your documentation, as well as I will put a link to that in the description. And finally, it is always really important to make sure that you are using your data ethically. And so a reminder about that your data is licensed for only 1 year from the point in time in which it was purchased, in which you can find out all the things in the terms of service, which you also agreed to when you purchased it. You get a few different folders worth of data, and a lot of them are statistics, which can be really helpful for understanding like how many cell phones were there in each block group. But for what we're going to be doing today, we actually are just going to be looking at the Your Data folder. And in here is a CSV, which I am going to open quickly right now. So obviously, depending on how many stores that you purchased data for, that will mean that there's going to be more data. But right, we looked at the schema previously, and so when we were online, but you'll see here that there's that the data here is that there's a ton of data, but maybe it's not in the most useful format for you. At least it's not in the most useful format for me, right? Because I at least have to parse out this because the question that I want to answer is, how did sales compare on the Tuesday before Pancake Day and the Tuesday after, or the Tuesday of Pancake Day? And so one of the things that SafeGraph has done is they've actually created a data parser to help you parse this out. And the reason why there's a data parser is that you may not actually care about having, all of these. Well, you'll see here in a minute. So I'm going to close that, and we're going to, it's asking me, we're just going to cancel. All right. So if we go to the SafeGraph data parcel, which is the parser.safegraph.com, and we can drag and drop our file. So I'm just going to drag and drop my CSV here. And so now what you can see is we are getting the opportunity to explode out our data. So those fields, like the number of visitors by hour, we now have an ability to, explode that out of it. So I'm actually going to go through here, and I'm going to turn off some of the fields that I just don't think that we need to make things a little bit easier. So I know what the brand is for everything. I know what the key is. So I'm going to keep the lat and the long. I'll keep the street address and the city in case that's helpful. We'll keep the zip code. Okay, so here we have the ability to add the open hours. So if we were to add it as rows, or we can add it as columns. I don't need the open hours for this analysis. So is this like a newer store or an older store? We could do analysis off of that. I don't need to do that. I'm going to add in the raw visit counts. So really what I'm curious about is the visits by day. I want to add the visits by day as rows. We could also add in the visits by hour, and so we could actually compare, how did the 4 o'clock hour compare on Tuesday the 22nd compared to Tuesday the 1st. But for simplicity in this analysis, also because that adds 14,000 rows, we are not going to do that. For visits by day, then we're going to click Generate and Download. Hey, this is Editing Juliana popping back in here. One other thing that you need to make sure that you have is the date range start or the date range end for the analysis to work. I have put in the description box below all of the fields that I ended up using in this analysis. So sorry for any confusion. All right, and so now we can open up our file on our computer and we can take a look at this. So I have the latitude and longitude, I have the address, the city, so we can see that there were 120 visits, and so for each of these there's going to be 2 records for one for the first week and one for the second week. So visits by day 1. So day 1 within the SafeGraph data is going to be on a Monday. So there were 20 visits on the first day, 10 visits on the second day, etc. So here we can essentially compare week 1 and week 2 data together. And so here we have the bucketed dwell times. So we can see that there were 4 people who stayed less than 5 minutes. So this is how the data looks after we have downloaded it and exploded it. You can explode the data in so many different ways, right? Which is just like a way of doing pivots, and then to begin to explore and do things within the data. All right, so now that we have our data and we have downloaded it and we have looked at it in Excel, I now want us to actually take the opportunity to visualize it. So I'm using the visualization tool Tableau, and I find Tableau to be a really great way to be able to work with our data and to be able to analyze it pretty easily. One of the things that's really great is that our data is set up right now so that we have 2 weeks, our week 1 and our week 2 are on 2 different rows, and so we can easily analyze it in Tableau. I'm using Tableau Public for this, which is a free version of Tableau. You can't save anything directly to your computer, but you can save versions of your work on Tableau online. And so that's a really great way if you're interested in learning more about data visualization to do it in Tableau. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to connect data, and I'm going to connect to a text file because we have a CSV. And I have my file right here, and I'm going to go ahead and select open. And so now, I don't know how familiar you are with Tableau. Probably because you're watching this channel, you are more of a GIS user. There's a lot of really great data. It's pretty easy to use. So this is sort of how do we want to bring in our data. And for this, for our purposes today, I am really only interested in this visits by day 2, which is the second day of the week, and the week starts on Monday. And because we're interested in comparing one Tuesday to another Tuesday. So I'm going to actually remove these additional columns just so that we don't have as much that we're working with. So I've selected those, and I'm just going to hide them. And this is fine. The other thing that I'm going to change is this field that is date range start. So again, that's where I came back in editing Juliana and told you that you needed to add it. This is a really important field, and we're going to change that to a date time field because it is a date time field. All right, so now we have our data and it's ready for us to work with. So down here at the bottom where my face is, so we're going to move my face over here. We can go to sheet 1 and we have our data. So then we are going to first create a calculated field for week. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to do create calculated field. We're going to call this week. And our formula is going to be if DATEPART. So this is saying like this is how this will be. And I will put this down in the description what the formula is. So if the DATEPART, and we want to say if the day, and then our field is date range start. So if the date part equals 28, then week 2. So we're saying that that's the second week. And then I'm just going to copy this. So else if date part day equals 21, then week 1, right? So we have two weeks of data. The first starts on February 21st. The second starts on February 28th. And so then if it's not one of those, we'll say else null and then end. All right, and we're not, oh, of course, the calculation has some errors. And the syntax matters here. The issue here is I had 2 ifs. And so there we go. So again, we're saying if the date part of our date field is equal to 28, then it's week 2. If the date part is 21, then it's week 1. And so now we have our week. So if I were to pull in our week and put that in columns, we can see that we have week 1 and week 2. If we were to look at street address, I actually want the street address to be our rows. And then if we did visits by day 2, right? So that's the number of visits on the Tuesday. And if I just pull that in as text, and so we then filter on week so that we can now only see week 1 and week 2. And so you can see here that there were 4 visits the second week, right? And again, with SafeGraph data, we're not going to get like a totally accurate like number, like total of foot traffic, but we're getting an idea in terms of magnitude, and it's really helpful for us to see. Then we can also do a calculation where we can compare between week 1 and week 2. And so to do that, we are going to go create another calculated field, and we're going to call this difference. And so for that, we're going to do sum, and then visits by day 2 minus lookup, and then this ZN is essentially like if it's null, make it a 0. Sum, and all of this is going to be in the description box below, so you can actually just copy and paste it in and to be able to do this for yourself. Okay, so we have that, and the other thing we need to do then is we need to set this to an index, and we want to compute this using the week. And so then this calculation is valid. So if I add in our difference here, oops, I want to change this to being text. Okay, so for example, we have 2 and 4, and then if I pull in, so the difference is going to be 2, so that's going to be harder. So if we have 12 and 18, so the difference it should be 6. Why aren't we seeing this? All right, so I put that in there so we can begin to see that we're beginning to be able to see the difference that's here. But let's actually put this on a map, because that's where this becomes a lot cooler. So if you just add a new sheet, if you are not super familiar with the world of Tableau, you just click this new sheet button at the bottom. So let's now try and put this on a map. So what I'm going to start off by doing is we want to look at this on a map. So we're going to add in our latitude and our longitude to the map. So I'm just going to double click latitude, and I'm going to double click longitude. So you can see here we have a central point on our map, and that is because Tableau is aggregating all of the data together. So if I add in the street address, which is sort of our unique identifier, you can now see that we have a bunch more points are populating on our map. And so now if we wanted to compare these between weeks, if I were to pull the weeks in, so we have those that are null, we have week 1 and week 2, we're just seeing our data here. And so if we were to pull in that difference calculation that we did, and I could now look here, and really, because our calculation is only dealing with the second week of, right, what's the difference between week 1 and week 2, this is like some of the intricacies of Tableau. We're only going to see this calculation show up on our week 2 map, which makes sense. The calculation is going to show up on our week 2 map. So we can then actually go here and we can hide week 1 and the null. So I can hide this and I can hide this. And we can now see that we have our beautiful week 2 map here. And let me also add in our difference is going to be the size. And so here, what we're seeing is both the color and the size is indicative of what the difference was. So a place like here, so I think that this is probably in Springfield. Let me add in the city as well. So yeah, so this is in Springfield. So in this one, there was a difference of 20 visitors from the previous week to Shrove Tuesday, Pancake Tuesday, when they were running their sale. We can see that overall, there were more visitors on the Tuesday when they were giving out free pancakes than there were compared to the Tuesday before, but not everywhere, right? So we can see here in Southern Illinois, in Carbondale, which is a college town, that there were 4 less people on the free pancake day than there were the week before. But right here in the town over, there were 4 more people than the week before. So it's variable. So there's a lot more analysis that you can actually do with the SafeGraph data. This is just like beginning to scratch the surface. But my hope is that this can get your wheels turning, right? That you're able, right, if you are working for Denny's, that you're able to spy on your competitor and understand some of their market trends in a way that you haven't been able to before. And that's super powerful. So you can begin, within the data that we have purchased, if we go back to it, we have all sorts of different variables that were made available to us, right? So we have things like, what are the home block groups of these people? So we could look at where they're coming from. Where are they spending time during the day? Those are super powerful in terms of being able to understand your customer base, being able to understand somebody else's customer base. And particularly if you think about how this can be used for good and for in the nonprofit world, there are just so many possibilities. And so I am just really excited. So in the description box below, if you've made it to the end of this, I am really thankful, and I'd love to know what questions you have about this analysis. But also, don't forget that you can use the code Juliana50 to get $50 off your first purchase of data from the SafeGraph shop. All of the links, everything in terms of how you get this is going to be down there. I'm going to say I would really appreciate it if you go and purchase some data using that code, just for you to be able to learn and explore. But those are things that also help me as a creator out as I work on producing content for you. Also, all the formulas that we've used here in Tableau will also be in the description box below. But let me know what questions you have. And again, thank you so much to SafeGraph for partnering with me on this. Again, I fully support the SafeGraph product. It's a product that I use on a consistent basis. And so I would not be supporting them or have this partnership with them if this was not something that I was 100% behind.